Welcome back to another episode of Whiteboard Thursday. I am Robert Newman. I am the founder of InboundREM. You can go to InboundREM.com to learn more about me or the company. Today what we're going to cover so what I did in order to do this whiteboard is I found the questions that buyers and sellers of real estate are asking the most right now, today. Okay, and I'm going to explain how you're going to leverage each one of these into an opportunity to create interest on social media, to create leads for yourself, if that's what your objective is, and effectively handle taking Google research, because anybody can do this. What I did was I Googled top questions home buyers are looking to get answered, and top questions sellers are looking to get answered. So we're just going to leap right into it. On the buyer side, the questions, which is obviously broad and categoric, needs and wants. So the questions that buyers often ask are specific to the type of real estate they're looking for, such as people who are looking for homes on a lake are going to ask the question of, does the house have a dock? Okay. Does the house have a boat shed? Does the house have a well if you're looking at land? All right. Does it have the ability to have water rights on the land? Those are needs and wants that are going to be specific to the type of buyer that you're dealing with. Now, most of you are going to be dealing with none of those things. Most of your buyers are going to be looking at needs and wants as something far more basic. So what do you think the most common buyer question is? It's really going to be price. All right, price along with a certain number of bedrooms. Over 45% of the people looking for homes are still first-time home buyers or people that fall into the category of trying to move into a house to support a family. Now that comes down to how many bedrooms does the house have? And how many bathrooms does the house have? And what is the accessibility of this house to schools? What school district does it fall into? And things like that. Now, the reason that I kept this list broad is that the needs and wants of your buyers are going to be different. So what you would do in order to find out what the needs and buyers, instead of this big, huge, massive, broad, almost unusable list, what you would do is you would Google, what questions are home buyers asking looking in Van Nuys, California? Okay, and then you'll find probably some interesting blog posts. You might find some TripAdvisor comments. You might find some Reddit comments. You might find some Quora comments. Now, these are all websites where real live human beings go and basically talk about stuff that they're looking for, maybe a frustration experience that they had. A very, very clever real estate agent or realtor would look locally. Another website that's really popular here in California is neighborhoods.com. Okay, and they would look locally and they'd find out what people are talking about. Now, neighborhood.com, if you were looking at what concerns actual homeowners have that already live in the area, neighborhood.com is by far and away one of the best. I belong to neighborhood.com, and I always know whose trash cans are being stolen, whose dog got out of the house, was there any crime in the area today? If so, what kind of crime was it? All those things are being dialogued about with the actual homeowners that live there. There is never a time where you cannot access the real needs and wants of people that might be looking to buy or sell a home. I got to tell you, as a professional salesperson, this kind of research does two things for you. Number one, it allows you to create content that you might be able to get some leads off of, which is what we're mostly going to talk about. But as a salesperson, it also gives you the opportunity to prepare for what the needs and wants of your consumers are. Now, some of you might be very, very experienced salespeople, and you might be going, Robert, I don't need to know that. I don't know that I would agree with you. I'm a 35-year sales veteran. All right, and I still learn things about my neighborhood that I would leverage if I was a real estate agent. For instance, if a buyer is coming to me with a question and says, Van Nuys is in my price range, What are the neighborhoods like? All right, if I was on neighborhoods.com and understanding at a very granular level what each neighborhood was experiencing, that level of expertise communicated to a potential buyer puts me further down people essentially are like emotional thermometers. The more information that you give them, the more value that you provide right out of the gate, the faster that you provide it, the higher the thermometer is risen in terms of your personal credibility. And at the top of the thermometer, it's making decision, using you as your person, creating a relationship, and having that person use you for all of their real estate transactions forever. And part of what people want, without understanding that they want it, is they want you to have all the answers that they didn't even know that they needed. So being able to talk in depth about crime rate, neighborhood to neighborhood, street to street, whose trash cans are being stolen, small irritating things like this, would allow a very, very good salesperson to either overcome or illustrate challenges that would go along with a reasonable price tag. You can still buy a home in Van Nuys for under $1 million. That's rare in California right now. But it isn't the best neighborhood. We do have higher crime. We do have people stealing trash cans. We do have violent crime. Understanding the needs and wants and comparing it to that person, number one, allows you to create some good content that would really generate you some leads. The deeper you can go, the more research that you can do around the needs and wants of the areas that you serve specifically, and get clever in terms of how you're looking for those answers, like Quora and TripAdvisor and Reddit. What you're looking for is people that actually live there versus people that want to buy there. And then you're looking to have a conversation about the things that you think that buyers would want in the needs and wants buckets, because you can buy a 2 or 3 bedroom house that's about 1,300 to 1,500 square feet for somewhere between $800 and $875 right now in Van Nuys, which makes it a very appealing area from one of the needs and wants that I just discussed, which is price. But the thing that people would have that they may not even realize that they'd have is questions about the safety, security, noise levels. My neighborhoods are highly Hispanic, and so there's a lot of noise, quinceañeras and stuff like that. There's no such thing as time sensitivity to noise in my neighborhood. That if you knew that in advance and were able to discuss it with a buyer, that raises your credibility to that buyer about how knowledgeable you are. And even if they decide not to buy in Van Nuys, they may very well decide to use you to buy someplace else. The kind of content that you produce is a video going over the things I just told you. Go on to Reddit, go on to TripAdvisor, read the concerns using a screen share and answer them as a realtor. It's the easiest kind of video that you can possibly produce, and it will very much address a lot of the needs and wants. It's very deep down what's called the buyer's funnel. That just means that people who are looking for these kinds of answers are pretty deep in the search process and probably pretty close to buying a home. So this kind of video that you're creating is answering somebody very close to the top of the funnel, but you can't necessarily get in front of that person using paid advertising or other forms of advertising, like paid methodologies, because it might be too expensive. Like, you can't just keep targeting homes for sale. I know that's what you're all being trained to do, but it's not practical all of the time. Some of you it's practical, but not all of you. Deal breakers. Okay, so buyers, deal breakers. Now, this is definitely something that is a little tougher to define on a whiteboard, okay, because it involves a sales strategy. And that's part of what I want to cover. Because if you guys are not asking the question up front with your clients, then you are setting yourself up for failure. In the very first 20 minutes of qualifying a customer, when you get beyond their financial wherewithal, you get beyond the fact, can they buy a home? Do they already have property? Do they have equity? Do they have a loan? You guys should know the drill. Once you get past that, the very next question is, what are your deal breakers? Now, here is an interesting content strategy that I've never ever put online before. It's just for the people that are watching this video. A great piece of content that an experienced agent who's had a few transactions under the belt, who've had the chance to talk to consumers and prospects and understand what those conversations role roll around like, could very easily make a great video or piece of blog content that would say the top 10 deal breakers for buyers in Van Nuys. Okay? People have not produced that kind of content. So every time you're first to market with a creative idea that answers important questions is every single time that you're creating a video or a blog post that's going to generate you leads. Okay? And if you're first to it, you also get the first chance to create a relationship with your end users that show them that you are at the tip of the spear in terms of ideas, usefulness, helpfulness. That is part of what I try to do. Always come up with things that people haven't talked to you about so that you subscribe to me as opposed to all the other choices that you have out there. Because you know that I'm occasionally going to give you an idea that nobody else is giving you. And then you're going to try the idea, and in many cases it's going to work. And then, you're a follower of mine forever, probably, because that's how it works with me and the people that I follow. Location for buyers. All right. So this is once again something that is talked about a lot. Now, digital marketing is really about oftentimes targeted markets. Like oftentimes having conversations with people for SEO and other services where location is the very first conversation that we have. What is the number one targeted market that you have? Real estate agents, of course, know that their buyers sometimes come in through the door and say, I'm willing to buy in Sherman Oaks, Tarzana, Encino, or Van Nuys. It's 4 different cities in about a 10, 15 mile radius. And that's the way that a real buyer relationship works, all these different locations. So when I talk to them about pigeonholing themselves or investing money into a certain market to start with, it feels counterintuitive. But let me tell you, your strategy for online content should work the same way that my consultations with customers work. You start someplace. Ladies and gentlemen, you start someplace. As an agent, you start with some zip codes that you think that are going to be more profitable. And I'll tell you what really becomes important to buyers. Have you sold a lot of homes in the location that they're interested in? If you become if I was the predominant real estate agent in Van Nuys, which is not a very sexy city at all, I would still be an incredibly successful real estate agent. So you definitely want to change your perspective about location when it comes to talking to buyers. You want to create playlists that have to do with each location. If you're using things like YouTube, you want to use hashtags that always use the location. If you're using things like Instagram and Facebook, both. If you're starting Facebook groups and marketing that way, you want to create groups around each location. You don't want to just do, can any of you imagine if I did, like any of you familiar with California said, I am part of the San Fernando Valley. That is massive. There's 30, 40 cities in San Fernando Valley. So if I created a Facebook group that says San Fernando Valley Real Estate, I wouldn't get very many people that would join it. Far too broad. Okay, but if I created a group that says Van Nuys Real Estate, a lot of people would join it. So location becomes a very important conversation with creating content and dealing with buyers. Okay, and then when you're talking about location, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to teach you the easiest sales strategy that there is, because most people are going to give you a selection of locations based upon the needs and wants. That's probably going to have a lot to do with price and size. So you're going to, and yards and pools and stuff like that. So then you say this, on a scale of 1 to 10, list like in order of priority, and it has to be slightly different, like a 9.5 versus a 9. List into me a priority based on location. Okay, so you get 1, 2, and 3 on location, and you kind of guide people into making sure that they've got that list. Okay, newsflash. As a salesperson, if you're anywhere in year 1 through 5, your only objective should be learning how to sell real estate and learning to sell as much of it as possible. So location should be secondary. As you get far more experienced and you really understand what you bring to the table, your clients should do business with you in location that you specialize in, because it's more time efficient for you, you'll make more money that way. And honestly, once you have the experience in sales in that area, it becomes much, much, much easier to sell more and more homes in a specific location. If you don't understand that intuitively, just check with the top producers in your office and ask them this question about location. You'll discover that I'm probably right. Commuting. How far are you willing to commute and where does your job go? So this is a great qualifying conversation. It is also incredibly intuitive when it comes to content creation and creating content around building leads. It's one of the most overlooked things too. Realtors are not answering this question. If you're in real estate and you are selling real estate, like listen, in Los Angeles County, there's still going to be 35 to 40% of the people that would be buying a home that are going to be commuting into Hollywood or Los Angeles, depending on what industry they're in. So quick qualifying question at the top of the funnel here about what you do for a living or where are you, like what's your circle that you're looking in, is really, really easy to start to understand where the big places are that people are commuting to. And then your content is always going, because that is a need, that technically falls under needs and wants. I want an under 30-minute commute, 2 homes, 2 doors, $870,000. What's your list of priorities? Stack that out for me. Is it price or commute that's more important? Then you get that list down and you create content around it. Like Van Nuys is a 30-minute commute into Los Angeles without traffic. It is about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour with traffic. I could create a video talking about the top 10 commutes in Los Angeles, and I might have to get a little more creative about this, but I probably could get away with doing a Google map, having pre-prepared some routes on that Google map, and just talking about the times, days, and nights that commute's going to be the worst. That would be a piece of content that I would do, that I would post it on my YouTube channel, like my website, my Instagram, and my Facebook. And honestly, from that point forward, every time somebody talked to me about commuting, I'd probably refer them to the video as long as it answered that list. And that is a great way to inspire dialogue between you and an audience, is talking about commuting. It's also something that very, 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 very few realtors do because they perceive incorrectly that it is an objection and they prefer not to talk about it online. They prefer, if they're going to talk about it at all, let the objection come up inside the sales presentation or the relationship building process. And I'm telling you all right now, that's wrong. You sell against every resistance as fast as you possibly can. If you know that you sell homes 20 or 30 minutes outside a city center and that there's traffic, that there's always going to be a commute, what you would do is you'd say, hey, listen, as part of the presentation, the commute is an hour long and it's a little bit annoying. However, the price of the home is $100,000 less than someplace 30 minutes closer. That's how I would deal with it as a salesperson. You can spend the $100,000, or we can look in this community that we're looking at. It's that simple. Amenities is the last thing that buyers are looking for. Now, you all know what an amenities is, I hope. 2 sinks, massaging shower heads, spas, pools, saunas, big yards. That might be more of a home feature. A driveway that you can park in, secured parking, gated. These are all kind of amenities. They all fall into the amenities list. And honestly, a lot of agents have taken little bits and pieces of amenities and broken those out into content that they create for the world at large. All right, so amenities is always a really great way to build an audience on YouTube or Instagram or other places, because amenities tend to be a function of the kind of real estate that you're selling. So I'm actually going to take an example that's going to be relevant to a lot of you. In LA, where I live, for the vast majority of my life, I lived in what was called a tract home. The tract home was built, it was called Morrison Ranch, and it was built by a builder whose name escapes me, but it was 500 homes that were all roughly the same. What was different about the homes was based on the floor model that you bought and the options that you chose when you got the home. The type of carpet, whether or not it had a sunroof or sunroom. And I'm gonna tell you something that's fascinating about amenities. Every now and again, you find yourself in a tract area, and then there are amenities there that are rare for that area, such as the sunroof. We had a library, a sitting room. That library was a rare amenity, that room that was adjacent to the master bedroom, and it was something that my parents special ordered. Now, all of you probably already know that you need to list that in the listing description. What very few of you know is going to be how you would leverage a specialized amenity into a lead generating video or piece of content. And the answer to that is something clever on the title. Like, have you ever wondered if a sunroom or a library actually exists in Morrison Ranch, as an example? And then you would take some pictures of said room and said, actually it does. And generally speaking, and then you list off, it costs about $50,000 to have that particular amenity. There are 6 homes in the area that have that amenity. If you'd like me to run through and see if any of those homes are available for purchase, you can reach out to me and let me know. But the first thing that you do is you sell them on the amenity in the area that they're looking for and see if it accidentally checks off one of their needs and wants. Now, these kinds of pieces of content, just so you all know, they need to be short. You can't invest a lot of time in them because the audience that's looking for it is going to be small. But the thing about online marketing that a lot of people get wrong is if it takes me, let's call it 30 minutes to an hour to drive out, and I do film a sunroom, let's say I walk in, take some pictures from a listing that happens to have a sunroom, and I go, and it's in an area that has 500 homes. Well, I walk in, I take that picture and I post that video and I mention the community that it's within, and I tag that video and I do the description, I do all that work. But it's one and done. I'm not going to do 6 different videos on that. All right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to let it sit there and see if it gets traffic, number one. And number two, the thing about doing amenity videos and things like it is it's very unlikely there's anything else like it online. And you oftentimes, like that one video, the crazy thing about videos, or at least with YouTube, not with Instagram, is the longevity of that marketing strategy. You do one video for 1 hour and it might get you in front of 200 people over 5 years, and all of that probably sounds horrible. Probably sounds horrible. Unless, of course, of those 200 people, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5% have reached out to you. Then you have 1 hour of your time that you took to get 4 conversations with potential buyers for a very low threshold strategy. Easy to produce, easy to get to, easy to do, easy to post online. This is one of the secrets of great content makers that make millions of dollars online, is because they've got videos that have been up for 3, 4, 5 years, and nobody's done another similar video. Nobody's going to guess that this particular kind of video will generate you a lead. Oftentimes videos that have 100,000 views don't generate leads. So why this? It's so specific. Because somebody was looking for that exact answer. You're the only person that has it, which means that if they have another question that's similar or they want to follow up on the question you already answered, there's only one person for them to go to, and that's you. All right. Accessibility, home hunting, property scene, and contact. All right, so accessibility options for those people that, once again, this comes down to on the buyer side. This is very similar to amenities. An amenity could be like a handicap ramp. How many houses in your area that you know of have handicap ramps and other accessibility issues? Yet, I want you all to remember, when I'm pointing out this list, this was number 6 of the most frequently asked buyers' concerns is accessibility. Number 6 in top 10, all right? I find that to be crazy. Crazy that it's so high on the list, crazy it's so easy to answer, crazy there's so much great content that can be built around it. All you need to do is start talking. Like my house, to get into the room that I'm in, it has stairs and it has 2 narrow doors. My home is not overly accessible, if that was a concern. It's not that expensive and it's great, but it's not overly accessible. So accessibility is an easy to find thing, easy to define, especially if any of you happen to know anybody that has any handicap whatsoever. At that point, accessibility becomes a very limited amount of your inventory is going to be accessible. Very easy for you to point out that the title of like a lead generating video is accessibility. These are the 10 most accessible homes in Van Nuys. It's number 6 on the most answered questions. Yet, I ask all of you watching this video this question. How many people have you seen doing accessibility videos? Because I haven't seen any ever. And I do this for a living, and I'm online every day. So huge opportunity here in accessibility. Huge opportunity for you to answer the question. Huge opportunity for you to build a brand, an informational brand around yourself that says that you care about the less physically advantaged humans that are amongst us. Blind people, deaf people, the list goes on. Or, and this is a big one, autistic children. I'm sure all of you know there's a proliferation of the new generation of children and things like that that have a wide variety of like OCD and things like that. And I think it's important to mention that some of those times, some of those children need special needs. They need accessibility to a school that has the ability to teach them. They need all sorts of things. And thus, if you were dealing with a neighborhood that, let's say, had a school for special needs kids, that would be one of the very first things I would do videos on. And I happen to have that. I can walk to it. It's right down the street. It's a special needs school. And so for me, even though my house is not great for handicapped people, it's great if you happen to have a really highly neurodivergent child. And now all of a sudden this house, which is me, you know, scale of 0 to 5 for most people, might be more like a 9 to 10 because of the needs and wants and accessibility being so high on the list if you had a special needs child. Home hunting and property scene. So guys, I'm not going to spend too much time with that in terms of these questions. They mostly probably fall, home hunting and property scene are two categories that your competitors, Zillow and Realtor.com, are going to blog about endlessly, and there's going to be lots and lots of information. I don't feel that these are massive opportunities for people trying to help out buyers because there's going to be so much noise in the market when you start talking about home hunting. Now, the only exception to that is that very small handful of you that might be more accounting brain people than salespeople. And the reason I say that is that there are some of you out there, because I've met you and I've talked to you, that have home hunting lists that you've created. Lists that your clients have given you, lists that you've generated, and it's lists of things that you should, questions that you should ask as it relates to home hunting. And if you happen to have one of those lists and it's 20 or 30 questions deep, a great way to gather, to do better than Zillow or Trulia is if you happen to have one of those lists or can create one of those lists, and now you've got probably one of the best what are called lead magnets that exists. That is something that you've got that nobody else has that would be wildly valuable to every single person searching for a home that you can safely and with a great deal of confidence request that person's information online. Send me your email, call me, text me. I'll send you my home hunting list. It's 45 questions built over a 20-year career. It's going to absolutely give you everything you need to ask every single realtor that you talk to. I'm going to give it to you free. I just want the opportunity to introduce myself before I do. Property scene is obviously a qualifying question when you're dealing with a buyer. What have you already looked at? Should be sales 101. Like, what have you already seen? And what did you like the most? That's probably when you are talking to a potential buyer of your services. What have you seen? What have you liked? What you didn't like? Why haven't you bought what you already looked at? And weirdly, on the list of things the buyer questions ask is contact information. Now, I presume, and I don't know why it was on the list, but I did decide to have my assistant write it here, is because I presume that crazily enough, when people are already doing these answers places, they are not making on every single page an easy way for people to contact them. And that's nuts. So make sure that you don't forget that. One of my favorite content producers, Ruth Krishanen out of San Francisco, is she's got like text me at the top of every single video. Text me, text me, text me. All right. Sellers. All right, this is probably the hotter of the two categories. With all the NAR changes, the market being what it is, honestly, sellers and the questions that sellers are asking becomes a massive area of interest and opportunity for most of you. Sellers, background, processes, pre-marketing and marketing. This is what people are asking for. This is what sellers are asking. What is your background? All right? I think that this is overseen, so I'm gonna share something with all of you. I have come across in the last few years, if I asked everybody who's watching this video to guess what the prior career was to some of the top producing real estate agents in the world, what would you think that they would be? I'm going to give it a long pause. Strangely, 2 of the top 10 realtors I've talked to in the last few years, one who makes about $1 million a year and the other one that makes about $9 million a year, were both teachers. One in elementary school and one in college. That was their background, teaching. They already worked really hard. They decided to work hard for themselves. They educated buyers on the process. One of those 2 people does homes in an area where you wouldn't think the buyers would need to be educated. $5 to $10 million homes. Yet the answer is pretty simple. Listen, when you're making a major financial transaction, and I know this from experience, like when I call a stockbroker, I know a lot about stocks. I certainly don't want to be teaching my stockbroker anything. I want them teaching me something. Okay, I know a lot about a lot of things, but when I am doing a high-end transaction, I pay you for you to know everything and explain it to me. Background is one of the most overlooked things when it comes to how people represent themselves online. I've talked about it in countless places. One of my favorite clients right now, somebody who's doing a lot of work, doing a really great job following my directions. That client was a server, a high-end concierge from Las Vegas that moved to another area and then started producing content. She was ultimately, she was a server. She has a service background, okay? And she's doing very, very well in real estate. Her husband is a professional chef, and he helps her out. These 2 career choices wouldn't necessarily seem to inspire like an easy segue into real estate, and I'm here to tell you all you're wrong. Service backgrounds in high-pressure environments is a thing that you should never, ever, 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 ever skip over, even if you're day 1 in your real estate career. You really need to lean into whatever you did prior. Now, there's a handful of you that are just getting out of school and going straight into real estate. And if that's the answer, then you're going to talk about your background and experience with your extracurriculars, just like you would when you're applying to be an intern, because you are applying to be of service to somebody else. So just like you would be applying for a job, you're applying to have the job of being somebody's seller's agent. So it lists your skills and experience that have led you to the point that you decided to be a real estate agent. And for those of you, and this is the vast majority of you watching the video, you all did something before real estate. All of you. You answered phones, you delivered mail, you delivered packages for Amazon. And every single time, one of the very first sales strategies, if I could ever teach you one, is learning how to apply the synonymous, like the relevant areas of your past experience to your current job. How would an Amazon delivery guy be relevant for real estate? Well, if you happen to be like, listen, that's what's called a logistics background. So you should know how to get from point A to point B. That was part of your career. So when we go back over here and we look at things like commuting, these are all areas that you are probably extraordinarily qualified to talk about. All right, if we talked about a teacher, that should be easy. Teachers are so undervalued in our society because they are consummate learners, and then they have to teach you that information so they can learn all about properties and real estate. And most teachers work 60, 80, 100 hours a week. So they're not scared of working hard for a seller. They'll go out and research anything you want, learn it fast, and come back and teach you. It doesn't matter what the question is, because that's what you did. You learned and you taught for a living. Now, background can be played into here too, because the number one place that realtors are making more and more money, and there are those of you who work harder and make less. There's a very small handful of realtors who are making a lot more and working a lot less. And newsflash, those people are getting deep into process. An example is there's a tool out there called Nuys that is taking the 500 documents that you have to sign up for the platform, but once that's done, it takes all the documents, puts them into one place, and the buyer and the seller get to sign them all digitally, all 500 pages. Okay, so it takes a process that used to take many visits, back and forth, trips to the house, all this, and takes it onto a digital platform, and it basically eliminates 30 to 100 hours of the process of buying and selling a piece of real estate. And there are many things out there that are like that inside the real estate space. So for sellers, when you start talking about but you're probably going, well, Robert, how does that generate me leads? I would think that the answer would be self-evident, but let me help you out in case it's not. The very minute that you can say that you're going to do a thing that anybody can do, like any real estate with a license can probably sell a home right now. Inventory is just crazy nuts. So you've got to really sell somebody on why it's got to be you. Or you can generate some leads from sellers, right? Well, if you are certain that you take 50 hours less to close a deal, if you guys are not wondering, even though the money might be huge, it might be the biggest transaction of this person's entire life, they might be looking at $600,000 or $6 million, who knows? And you might ask, well, why does that matter? Every single realtor says, I'm going to sell your home fast. All of you do it. There's only a small handful of you that actually have the processes in place to sell the home faster, or to get the money quicker, or to eliminate annoying parts of the selling process, the home evaluation process, the taking of photos, the listing of the house. I know one of my clients has got that whole process down. You can list the home, he can stage it and list it and get it all online all in less than a week. Okay, he's got his processes nailed down, which also means that if he can get all the groundwork done faster, even though he cannot technically speed the banks up, he can speed all the other processes up and end up with money in your pocket faster. Your processes, every single one that you may have worked on for years, figuring out the right vendor to do your transaction coordinating, it might be worth talking about. It just depends on where you're at with it. If all of you are using Zipfile or whatever the name of that company is, and every single one of you is using the same process, or everybody you're working for a big broker and the process is the same, maybe this is not a sellable point. Maybe you're not there, or maybe you got stuck with something like Command and it's not necessarily faster than other tools. So you wouldn't necessarily talk about the processes. But every single time I dig into processes with a realtor and the thousands of consultations I've done, and generally, I'm not a real estate process expert. I'm a real estate marketing process expert. That's different. I usually can find 5 or 10 ways to scale down their time by 25% without even working at it very hard. Realtors don't generally tend to focus on process. You don't talk about it a lot. You don't put it online. You don't have YouTube or Instagram videos talking about how efficient your selling process is, and you should, especially right now. You should, because what if the decision between you and another agent comes down to how fast somebody thinks you can do the deal? And obviously you want to, we focus on price a lot of time. How much can you sell for? How good of a negotiator you are? But when the market is really, really over hot, even a bad realtor can probably get above asking price. People will bid themselves up. Oftentimes people are bidding themselves up to the highest point that they can afford, and you've got 30 offers. It's a weird market. So you really, your negotiating skills right now is actually not your top selling point. It's just not going to be for most of you. What would be past that is process. And talking about how you do it is going to be a very, very potentially game-changing lead generation situation for you, especially as more and more of you realize you want to be in front of sellers right now. Pre-marketing. Pre-marketing is something it should be in the process bucket, but we separated it out. And same thing with marketing. Pre-marketing and marketing. I'm going to make this one category. Oh, boy, is this a pet peeve of mine. It's a pet peeve of most experienced realtors. You take a realtor that's first year into the business, and you take somebody that's been doing it for 10 years, you take both realtors in the same neighborhood, and somebody might say there's no difference between the two. Boy, oh boy, is that probably not true. Number one, a brand new realtor might not even understand listing syndication, which is basic, super basic. And most of the time your broker will tell you they're doing listing syndication. That just means they're going to get your listing out in front of many different places like Zillow, Trulia, all those places. And most of the time they do. Most of the time they do. But oftentimes pre-marketing comes down to an experienced real estate agent having a list of 10,000 people that have bought or sold homes with him before, or 1,000 people, or whatever the number is. And pre-marketing would be, to be honest with you guys, pre-marketing is probably the place that most of my high-end luxury realtors who make over $1 million plus make the most money. It's pre-marketing. Why? Well, legally speaking, there's usually this brief amount of time in which you can understand that you're going to get a listing but not list it anywhere. Called pocket listings. Most of you have heard of them. And pocket listings, you can pre-market them. You can say this home is going to come up for sale soon. It's still private. You still can't see it, but you can book a private appointment with me, and maybe, if you're very lucky, I can get you in to see the buyer. Now, where would pre-marketing go? Your consumer list, like things like that. You can also use it on your website. You can close down access to your pre-marketing properties. Say these are coming for up and coming for sale, not yet listed. You have to message me or register with the website in order to see these properties at all. It is probably one of the most effective lead generation tools that is available today, besides new development, is pre-marketing and marketing, last but not least. Marketing, when you're dealing with high scale enough properties, realtors sign contracts with their buyers that literally guarantee that they're going to take like $110,000 out of their own pocket to market the property. It's going in magazines, it's going in newspapers still, they may even allot a budget for digital marketing, YouTube videos. I can go on and on. Marketing is a thing at the higher end of the scale, and those luxury agents that are watching this video know that already. They know it. What mid-tier and lower-tier real estate agents don't realize is that marketing, one of the things I love about digital in general, is that if you walk into a consumer and say, I have 1,000 people that follow me, or 5,000 people, like in Ruth's case, hey, those 5,000 people are my audience. You get those people with me just by signing with me, and another realtor doesn't have them. You already have a foothold in the local market because of how strong my informational brand is. Just go check it out yourself. Then, by the way, while you're at it, go ahead and check out my reviews, which, guess what, are part of your marketing. Your sold properties are part of your marketing. When you walk into somebody and say, I've already sold 15 properties in this city or in your neighborhood or in this area, that is marketing. That is marketing for your customer. Because when a buyer comes to your website and sees that you are a de facto person that has sold a lot of those properties, that you are using your past sales as part of your current marketing. You should be using it when you're talking to a seller. Okay, you should be using it the entire time. If you're not, change up your sales presentation. Change up your understanding of marketing, because in digital, how many reviews we have is part of our marketing. How many transactions have we done of a similar sort to the person that we're talking to is part of our marketing. What is the results of those transactions been? That's part of our marketing. It's called case studies. And if you're really, really wise, you're going to have some of those case studies on your website, on your Instagram, on your Facebook. What happened from start to finish when somebody came and did business with you that is similar to the seller that you're talking to? Which, by the way, also plays very well into buyers. These case studies work as buyer side and seller side marketing. Now, you also have traditional marketing, which I've already mentioned numerous times, mailers, email marketing. Some of you are still on cable news and cable TV and things like that. All of that is marketing, and a seller is asking the question about what are you going to do what are you doing to market me? And if you don't have a list like I just gave you that's big and sounds incredible, you're boned. And you can't use the same things that every single other person trying to get that listing is using. You can't just use, I'll get you on Zillow, or I'll do listing syndication, or you're part of the RE/MAX family of companies and we're going to send you out to every other RE/MAX office in the country. The only time that any of that makes any sense is if you can have a couple of case studies about how the Compass network or the RE/MAX network or anything like that actually generated a viable transaction in your history and experience, because every single person that works for every single major brokerage says the same damn thing when they walk through the door. How is the consumer, the buyer, supposed to know that this is better? And the seller knows that. The seller knows it. So when you are using your marketing, it needs to be detailed. And you need to make sure, you need to think it through and understand that your marketing needs to be more specific than the next guy's. And that if you do have some of these case studies, they're worth their weight in gold. Like if you got a referral from another agent in another office that ended up being a transaction, even once in your career, all of a sudden saying, I have the Compass network, becomes meaningful in terms of your marketing. It becomes meaningful to that seller because you got a case study and nobody else is going to bother to show that to them. So these are my answers to the top questions that buyers and sellers have and how you can generate leads, traffic, and interest digitally. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, you know you're ready for it, right? Thumbs this video up and leave me a comment if you're feeling up to it.